It's been a while. We last met when I visited your offices in Kenya. And
yeah, it was pre-COVID, I think.
Yeah, pre-COVID, yes.
Yeah, wow, that's a long time ago.
Hi everyone, my name is Jean-Betrand Mhandu. I work with earthday.org, coordinating Africa. Our guest today is Kaddu Sebunya, who is the CEO of African Wildlife Foundation. He is also with over 3 decades of experience in the field. Kaddu is or has played a pivotal role in protecting Africans' wildlife and wetlands while promoting sustainable development of local communities through innovative strategies and global partnerships. Kaddu is committed to preserving the continent's rich biodiversity for generations to come. Kaddu, you have been doing amazing work, and welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me, and great to see you again.
We can jump right into it, and you can tell us more about the work that you do as African Wildlife Foundation.
No, see, we are the oldest and largest international conservation NGO focused on Africa entirely, and we've been in existence since 1961. So we just celebrated 3 years ago, 60 years of our work on the continent. We've done a lot of things like many other NGOs engaged in this work. But I think for us, our theme is really how do we center Africans in the work of conservation? And what does conservation mean to Africa's aspirations and Africans' participation? That is our focus. And we're looking at 3 main results from our work. That Africans are involved, leading and participating and benefiting from conservation. And number 2, that Africans can actually live with wildlife. And the third one is the caring of wildlife, that the participation of Africans in caring for wildlife. Those are our 3 major results, but their strategies go beyond conservation. We do a lot of development work, sustainable development work, climate and biodiversity conservation.
Personally, maybe if you can just tell me or share with us your captivating story or experience from your career in environment and wildlife conservation that has, had a lasting impact on yourself personally.
Well, there are many stories I can tell. I mean, I've been in this field for more than 20 years. But let me share something I shared with my family. I think that's really something that I'll take to forever. It's really when I visited a conservancy to see the northern white rhino, which was the last male living. The white rhino population is completely extinct from the wild. And we had a privilege with my family to visit the last male. It was called Sudan, here in Kenya, in Laikipia. In 1950, just to give you a little bit of background, 1950, these northern white rhinos were counted, and there were about 3,000. In 1970, there were 350. In the year 2000, there were only 36 left in the wild. And they were eventually declared extinct in the wild in 2009. Just think about that. Just that period and that decline. So we visited this rhino sanctuary in Olpejeta. Currently, there are only 2 northern white rhinos remaining on the planet. And they are at this conservancy. So during this visit, the guide recounted the tragic story of this species. Sudan was the last male, born, captured, taken to Czech Republic, then brought back to Olpejeta, and can't have babies anymore. The kids turned to me and started asking me questions. Why is this rhino Sudan here and not in the wild? Why was it taken to Czech Republic? Where are others? What is extinction? Why are rhinos guarded 24 hours? These are the things the guide was talking about. And what touched me is these questions and their experience, and the idea that I'm explaining to my children that wildlife disaster was a result of human greed, negligence, lack of understanding of our connectedness to nature, and pure ignorance of wildlife's contribution to survival of a human species. How do you explain that to kids? That experience was very, very powerful for me, and a huge opportunity also to tell my children what we do and why we do it.
Wow, that's a very interesting story. But I thought we were going to have a fun conversation. Seems depressing, rather, because it's said that we have an extinction of these precious species that we should be having right now and having access. And now it actually makes sense where the inspiration comes from. But there are so many things that we have heard about extinction, and I always say this to my colleagues or the young generations that we hear about climate, we hear about biodiversity, but we have had the least experience compared to the elder generations. We hear that there is climate change, but it happened 30 years ago, but I'm only 30 years this year. So I don't know what the climate was like, 30 years ago. So it's just said that all we hear or the connectivity that we have is the story. So we do not have to lose, that intergenerational and institutional memory that you guys have. And this story actually, builds up, and it's a very good, example of what we are talking about. So as a conservationist, what drove your passion for protecting the environment and wildlife? Were there any specific moments or any encounters that ignite this dedication, maybe apart from the story that you just shared?
It's I'm not a biologist, so my background is not really somebody who studied conservation. My background is political science, is sociology, it's anthropology, it's economic development, international law, negotiations, legal framework. So it's really, but I became a conservationist, and I think a lot of people who are listening, they really need to understand that conservation is not about the science. It's not so much about being a professional academician in this field. We are all conservationists. We all can be. We can all practice conservation. I found myself here, and without any professional training in this field, but it's who I am. My experience in life that touched me and brought me here. First of all, as an African, you grew up surrounded with animals, whether they're stray dogs or dogs at home or cats or wildlife itself. So you see all these things. But I think what sparked it is the work I did early on, and I was working for a certain NGO. Just came back from my college in London, and they sent me to a fishing village which was in the middle of a national park. And my job was to mobilize these people for good water and sanitation. So we're digging boreholes for these communities. But they were surrounded by wildlife. And because I was born in the city, went to school in Europe, and I had never really interacted so much closely with wildlife until I went to this village. But what I saw in this village it's only me who got excited when I saw a zebra, a hippo, a lion. The villagers were looking at me and saying, "Why is he excited? What's going on here?" And I started asking myself that what's the relationship between people and this wildlife? The more I dig further into that question, the more I realized that if really Africans we take these things for granted, or we don't see their role in our aspirations and in our livelihoods, they're not going to exist for our children and our grandchildren. So I started asking, who's doing anything about this? So that's when I really started meeting a few conservationists, and many of them were non-Africans. And up to today, majority of conservationists doing work on this continent are not Africans. So I said, we need to, something needs to be done. So that is really, that's the spark. That's the spark. But also, just by my name, my culture, my background, these are our heritage. My name, as you introduced me, I'm Sebunya. If you go to Uganda and say I met Sebunya, they will tell you, oh, that guy belongs to a clan, and that clan is a Columbus monkey. So these animals define me. A Columbus monkey defines who I am. And by birth, I'm required to protect a Columbus monkey and its habitat. And by extension, I protect my mother's clan. I protect my wife's clan. So by just mere birth, majority of us here in Africa, we are conservationists, but we are not properly practicing it. But it's a requirement to many of us, living here.
True. I like the fact that you say it's part of who we are. I relate quite well because my totem is, a hippo, and it's how we are, as communities. Of which, because it stays in the water, it habitates in the water.
Yeah.
Also, named after rivers and so on, and it makes me fall in love with water and all the wildlife that and so on. So which is something that I relate to and makes us even more in touch with our nature and wildlife. So it's quite interesting that it's across and it goes down, from the generation when you met or you connected with that wildlife, and it has come down to even the younger generation, and it continues to run within our blood. How much of an issue are plastics and plastic trash proving to be for you in your work? And do you see animals harmed by plastics?
Yeah, actually, a lot of our work, it has the most serious impact on many of the species we work with, but also mostly the impact on our human life as our human species. I just happened to live in Kenya here. They banned traffic to plastics when I was living in this country. I could see the difference since the banning of plastic in Kenya. It's cleaner, the drainages work better, it has reduced mosquito infection very much. Agriculture, the soils, I could see soils are better now in Kenya, just in the last 8 years. So the impact of plastic to our livelihood is real. Wildlife, especially marine life, is destroyed by plastics. We see it in national parks, where littering, plastics and what it does. It apart from the soils, it brings diseases because the water, it holds water up ground, and some of the bacterial infections come from this water retained by plastics in national parks. We have nice programs where we do cash for work programs and involving communities to pick plastics from national parks. The bird life is bigly affected by plastics. I can go on with our water resources. So plastics is not only an environmental issue, it's a health issue, it's a life issue, it's a food security issue. It destroys our agricultural land. And it's a marine issue which destroys our blue economies. So it's a very, very huge impact to many of our lives.
Yeah, now that you have said that, it brings me to the next question, where we talk about the global emerging issues such as climate change. We also have habitat loss. Well, what do you consider the most critical concerns and opportunities for biodiversity conservation? the opportunities around it?
I think the biggest opportunity we have with biodiversity is the conversation we are having around climate change. Climate change has brought the world together, that issue. And for us here in Africa, I keep going back to Africa because I only work in Africa. The issue in Africa, climate change and Africa's biodiversity, is very critical as a part of the solution to climate change. There is no continent that is going to solve climate change issues without Africa, that has almost 30% of the global biodiversity. The Congo Basin itself absorbs more carbon than any other forest habitat anywhere in the world. It emits more oxygen than Amazon. And what maintains this forest is biodiversity. It's wildlife found in this forest. Without wildlife, you can't have Amazon, you can't have the Congo Basin. And then we can't have the role they play in managing, sustaining life and addressing climate change issues. So I think climate change is a big deal for all of us. But also, this is the youngest continent, Africa. Average age is 19 on the continent. The climate change is going to be an issue for someone who is young, anywhere in the world. The world is changing, and they will pay a price. So the young people needed to be mobilized. They need to take action in addressing the future. They are the custodians of this future. And we have borrowed a lot from their future for us to live today. So climate change can really, it's an opportunity for us, but also it's real. I've just heard just today that about 160 people died last week in Somalia on heat related. So it's a health issue, climate change.
It's something that is beyond imagination, but the innovation, it's something that people don't usually relate to. People now are more engaged in tech. They're not engaged in conservational knowledges, human biodiversity and human animal, how best we can do that, how we can improve with our way of lifestyle, agriculture, and so many practices.
Absolutely. And the mistake we've done previously is to discuss conservation outside everything else. Conservation needs to be in boardrooms, needs to go to parliament, needs to be discussed in the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Planning. It can't be discussed only in the Ministry of Environment. But also it has to be part of economic growth. So that is really the challenge we have today. With the population ballooning to 1.4 billion, we have no options.
Of course. And like we were saying earlier, it's also part of who we are as a continent. So we have to make sure that our planning, our development resonates and connects so that we don't lose what makes us a continent or what our contribution to the continent. Like you said, we contribute. You said, the Congo Basin itself contributes so much to the carbon sequestration and the oxygen that we share out there. And
we're doing it for the rest of the world. I mean, these are, while we are the custodians, these assets belong to the entire world. The Congo Basin, while we are the custodian as Africans, but it belongs to the rest of the world. The carbon it sucks out of the atmosphere doesn't only benefit Africa, in fact, it benefits Europe more. The oxygen it pumps out, it benefits the entire world. Africa has a third of the global freshwater lake, and rivers are found on this continent. So we are the last continent with these mega fauns, with this huge wildlife. A giraffe, the tallest mammal in the world. It doesn't belong to Africans, but we are the custodians of these global assets.
Do you have any message that you would probably like to share with young Africans out there?
Yeah, I think that the one message is that you are not so young not to do anything. You are not the leaders of tomorrow. You are the leaders of today. And what we are waiting for is really you taking charge. We are very inspired in where you are today. As young Africans, you are the most educated group of Africans that have ever lived on this planet. As a group, there is nothing that can stop you. Technology you have applied can solve so many problems. So the tools you have today can solve so many problems that my generation can only dream of. But one thing we want, which can inspire you, is the young generation that liberated this continent from colonialism. Majority of them were in their 20s. Nyerere, Lumumba, Nkrumah, Mandela. I can go on. They were in their 20s when they took on the liberation of this continent. What young people you have now is no longer fighting for independence. It's no longer fighting for economic means or education. You are more educated now. Climate change is going to be your war. You haven't picked it. It has picked you. You have the tools. You have the capacity. You have the means. So I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure having this conversation with you, and I hope you have a lovely birthday and you continue to thrive in the amazing work that you are doing with African Wildlife Foundation. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure.